These are three narrow waterways that carry a fifth of the world's oil, a third of its liquefied natural gas, and the economic fate of billions of people. And as of this summer, all three are under threat simultaneously for the first time in modern history. The Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb, and the Suez Canal. Three choke points, three pressure points on the global economy. And each one traces a direct line back to a warning that a retiring president issued 230 years ago in a Philadelphia newspaper. In September of 1796, George Washington published what would become known as his farewell address. It wasn't a speech. He never delivered it from a podium. It appeared in print, in the American Daily Advertiser, and in it, Washington asked a question that echoes with almost unbearable clarity today. Why quit our own to stand upon foreign ground? Why, by interweaving our destiny with that of any part of Europe, entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of European ambition, rivalship, interest, humor, or caprice? Replace Europe with the Middle East, and you have an almost perfect description of where America finds itself right now, in August of 2026. 5 months into a war with Iran that has cost $113 billion, choked the arteries of global trade, and triggered what the International Energy Agency has called the greatest energy security challenge in history. This is the story of how we got here. To understand the crisis, you have to understand the geography. The Strait of Hormuz is a passage of water between Iran and Oman that narrows to just 33 kilometers at its tightest point. On a normal day before this war, about 110 commercial vessels passed through it. 20 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum products moved through it every 24 hours. That's roughly 1/5 of global petroleum consumption and more than a quarter of all seaborne oil trade. It also carries around 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas supply, including Qatar's entire LNG export capacity, for which no pipeline alternative exists. Shut the Strait of Hormuz, and you don't just disrupt a market, you detonate one. The second choke point, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, sits at the southern end of the Red Sea, between Yemen and the Horn of Africa. About 7% of global oil output transits through it. It connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, the Arabian Sea, and from there, the world. It's narrower than most people imagine, and far more consequential than most people realize, because it serves as the gateway to the third choke point, the Suez Canal, Egypt's vital corridor linking the Red Sea to the Mediterranean. Together, these three passages form a single, interconnected system. Disrupt one, and the others come under pressure. Disrupt all three, and the global economy begins to buckle. That is exactly what has happened. The chain of events that led to this moment begins in 2025, with mass protests inside Iran. Demonstrations against the government escalated through the fall and into early 2026, and the Iranian regime responded with a crackdown that killed thousands of its own citizens. Washington watched. Jerusalem watched. And then, in late January of 2026, the United States began its largest military buildup in the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Air assets, naval forces, missile defense systems, all flowing into the region. The justification offered by the Trump administration was threefold: Iran's advancing nuclear program, the ongoing protests, and the regime's brutal response to them. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. The strikes targeted Iranian nuclear facilities, military infrastructure, and leadership. Among the dead on that first day was Aziz Nasirzadeh, Iran's defense minister. But the most consequential casualty was Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, killed in an Israeli air attack. Iranian state media confirmed his death on March 1st. For a few days, the world held its breath. Then the retaliation came. Iran launched missile and drone attacks on Israel, on U.S. military bases across the region, and on U.S. allied Gulf states. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued warnings forbidding passage through the Strait of Hormuz. They boarded and attacked merchant ships. They laid sea mines in the shipping lanes, and traffic through the most important energy corridor on Earth dropped from over 100 ships a day to, on some days, fewer than 4. Think about what that means. 110 ships a day reduced to 4. 20 million barrels of oil reduced to a trickle. An estimated 8 to 10 million barrels per day effectively removed from global supply overnight. The market reaction was immediate and severe. Brent crude surged past $110 a barrel, up from an average of roughly $75 to $80 in 2025. That's a jump of nearly 40% in a matter of weeks. At one point, prices spiked as high as $120 before pulling back. And every 10% increase in oil prices, as IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva warned, pushes up global inflation by 0.4 percentage points and reduces worldwide economic output by as much as 0.2%. Those are not abstract numbers. They're felt in the price of gasoline, in the cost of shipping, in the price of food, in the budgets of every household on the planet. Inside Iran, a power transition unfolded with remarkable speed. On March 8th, just 8 days after his father's assassination, Mojtaba Khamenei was elected by the Interim Leadership Council and installed as the third supreme leader of Iran. The regime didn't collapse, it hardened. The United States escalated in kind. On March 19, an aerial campaign specifically targeting Iranian positions around the Strait of Hormuz began, with the stated goal of reopening the waterway by force. It did not succeed. Then came the attempts at diplomacy. On April 8th, Pakistan brokered a 2-week ceasefire between Washington and Tehran. It lasted 5 days. By April 13th, the United States had imposed a full naval blockade on Iran. CENTCOM reported 85 vessels intercepted, 3 ships seized. Lloyd's List tracked 26 vessels that managed to bypass the blockade entirely. The U.S. estimated the blockade was costing Iran $500 million a day. Iran seized 2 cargo ships in retaliation, including 1 American-flagged vessel. A second ceasefire was negotiated in mid-June, a 60-day framework agreement that was supposed to create a pathway to reopening the strait and de-escalating the conflict. Defense expert Max Boot, writing for the Council on Foreign Relations, described the deal as widely criticized as an act of appeasement on Trump's part after failing to reopen the waterway by military force or to achieve his other military objectives. The ink was barely dry. Just over a week after the framework deal was signed, Iran launched a drone strike against a ship in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States interpreted this as a violation. Strikes resumed, and by July 9th, the ceasefire had collapsed entirely, with exchanges of fire between U.S. and Iranian forces plunging the region into renewed volatility. On July 11th, the U.S. military announced it had launched a 3rd round of strikes against Iran in a single week, this time in response to an attack on a ship passing through the strait. And that's when the crisis metastasized. Because the Strait of Hormuz wasn't the only choke point under assault anymore, with Hormuz effectively closed, global oil markets had come to rely on an alternative route: Saudi Arabian exports flowing south through the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Saudi oil had become the relief valve keeping the global economy from total seizure, and Iran knew it. On July 22, 2026, after a 9-month pause, Houthi militants in Yemen, the Shia militia aligned with Tehran, resumed attacks on vessels in the Red Sea. But this time, they weren't targeting random shipping. They were targeting Saudi Arabia directly. The Houthis declared a maritime embargo against the kingdom, threatening to cut off Saudi oil exports through the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb. The second choke point was now under siege. Deutsche Bank analysts issued an urgent note warning of the prospect of simultaneous disruption to both Gulf and Red Sea export routes. In a single sentence, that note captured the nightmare scenario that energy strategists had warned about for decades, but never actually expected to see. Then came the third choke point. On July 29th, a floating liquefied natural gas storage facility in Egypt's Mediterranean port of Damietta was struck by suspected Iranian drones. The attack caused a fire that spread to a nearby Greek-owned LNG tanker. Marine officers who fought the blaze reported fearing that the entire port and parts of the adjoining city could have exploded. It was the first attack of its kind in the area, and it sent an unmistakable signal. Iran and its proxies could threaten the Suez Canal itself. Egypt had already lost roughly $10 billion in Suez Canal revenues due to disruptions stemming from the Gaza war in previous years, according to President Sisi himself in a meeting with World Bank President Ajay Banga. Now the prospect of further disruption, of drone attacks on port infrastructure, of mines in the approaches, of insurance premiums so high that shipping companies simply refuse to transit, that prospect became terrifyingly real. 3 choke points, all under threat, simultaneously. Nobel laureate Simon Johnson of MIT put it plainly: the Strait of Hormuz has to be reopened. It's 20 million barrels of oil a day going through there. There's no excess capacity anywhere in the world that can fill that gap. He's right, and the numbers bear it out. As of June 2026, the cost of the war to the United States alone was estimated at $113.3 billion. The Trump administration requested $1.5 trillion for the Pentagon over the next fiscal year. The Global Peace Index estimated that a resumption of the Iran war could deliver a $2.2 trillion blow to the world economy. And all of this, every dollar, every barrel, every mine in the water, traces back to a decision made on February 28th to launch strikes against a nation that controls one side of a 33-kilometer-wide waterway through which the modern world's lifeblood flows. Which brings us back to George Washington. There's an almost eerie detail in this story that deserves attention. Every year, Washington's farewell address is read aloud in the United States Senate, a tradition that has continued without interruption. And in the House of Representatives, the address was read on Washington's birthday in early 2026, just days before Operation Epic Fury began. Days before the bombs fell. Days before the strait closed and the oil markets convulsed, and the Houthis declared their blockade and drones struck an Egyptian port. Washington's words, read into the congressional record, and then immediately disregarded in practice. And here's something worth knowing. The phrase, entangling alliances, so often attributed to Washington, was never actually his. Washington warned against permanent alliances. It was Thomas Jefferson, in his first inaugural address in 1801, who coined the more dogmatic phrase, entangling alliances. But the sentiment was Washington's, rooted in his own experience as a general who knew firsthand how costly wars could be. He wanted the young republic to maintain neutrality with foreign governments as much as possible, to build strength at home rather than project it endlessly abroad. He also warned about something else that feels prophetically relevant: political partisanship. The 2026 Iran war has not only disrupted global markets, it has deepened domestic divisions in ways that mirror Washington's fears almost exactly. The debate over war powers, over whether the president needed congressional approval for sustained military operations against Iran, has become one of the most contentious political fights in Washington. The War Powers Resolution requires the president to seek congressional authorization within 60 days of committing forces to hostilities. President Trump effectively sidestepped this requirement by refusing to label the military campaign a war, a semantic maneuver that drew criticism from both sides of the aisle, though for very different reasons. Washington warned against exactly this kind of fracture. He cautioned against 3 interrelated dangers: regionalism, partisanship, and foreign entanglements. He understood that they feed on each other, that a foreign war inflames domestic division, that domestic division weakens the ability to conduct foreign policy coherently, and that the cycle, once begun, is extraordinarily difficult to break. As of early August 2026, Brent crude has settled around $89 a barrel after a brief pause in fighting, down from its peaks, but still well above pre-war levels. Traders remain deeply wary. The Strait of Hormuz is still contested, with Iran firing on vessels attempting alternative routes through Omani waters. The Bab el-Mandeb remains under Houthi blockade. The Suez Canal approaches have been demonstrated to be vulnerable to drone attack. 3 routes exist through the Strait of Hormuz now, a proposed UN and Omani route hugging the coast, which Iran has accused Oman of opening under American pressure, the pre-war shipping lane near the center, which Iran now designates a danger zone, and whatever path individual captains are brave or desperate enough to chart on their own. On some recent days, fewer than 10 commodity ships have made it through. 230 years ago, a retiring president sat down with his Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, and composed a letter to the American people. Hamilton did most of the heavy rewriting. Washington provided the final edits. And together they produced a document that the Virginia Museum of History and Culture describes as eloquent in its plea for the maintenance of the Union and far-sighted in its warnings against political strife and foreign entanglement. Far-sighted, that may be the understatement of 2 centuries. Washington couldn't have imagined oil tankers, or drone strikes, or liquefied natural gas, or the Strait of Hormuz. But he understood something fundamental about the nature of power and the price of projection. He understood that a nation entangled in distant conflicts pays not only in treasure and blood, but in its own cohesion. He understood that the costs compound, that they outlast the original justification, that they reshape the country waging the war as surely as they reshape the country suffering it. The question Washington posed in 1796 has never been more relevant. Why quit our own to stand upon foreign ground? America is now 5 months into a war that has put 3 of the world's most critical maritime choke points at risk, cost over $100 billion, driven global oil markets into turmoil, and reignited a constitutional debate about who gets to decide when the nation goes to war. Whether or not you believe the war was justified, whether you think Iran's nuclear program and its brutal crackdown demanded a response, or that diplomacy should have been given more time, the underlying tension remains the same one Washington identified. Every alliance carries a cost. Every entanglement has a price, and sometimes that price is measured not just in dollars or barrels, but in the slow erosion of the very principles the nation was built to protect. Washington knew. He tried to tell us. The question now is whether anyone is still listening.